r/NoSleep. Posted by ThatWoodenCatStatue. Whatever's going around our town isn't just the flu. I kinda figured as much when I saw sweet old Margie Goldman tear the door of my coworker Chevelle clean off its hinges. God damn it, dude, I just got the doors painted to match the body, Sam said as the geriatric lady ravaged his car. I'm a little more worried about Margie than your car, man, I replied, heading to the concession stand so I could call for help. I wasn't really sure if I should call the police or the old folks' home. She was just a decrepit, little thing anyways. I was a little irritated that it hadn't even been an hour since I clocked in that some bullshit of this magnitude was already happening. For reference, I work at the park in our little town. Groundskeeping and all that. Before I could get to the small, brick building, I noticed Sam stomping over to the elder woman. Hey lady. Get your foo. He stopped, taking a couple steps back as she turned to face him. Her irises were noticeably dimmer, the whites of her eyes taking over like the gnarliest case of glaucoma one could imagine. If that wasn't enough to send Sam and I scurrying into the confines of the concession stand, then maybe it was the demonic, guttural scream which emerged from her veiny throat shortly thereafter. Sam took another step back as she got down on all fours, moving with more grace than I'd ever seen in any of the early morning walks she would take. Sam turned tail, darting for the stand as I stood waiting with the door open. He blew past me, the old woman mere feet behind him as I slammed the door shut in her face. I think the debate on calling the police was over. I ran over to the window of the concession stand and drew it shut, making sure it was also locked. I dialed the police as quickly as possible as Sam did his best to barricade the building. If she's strong enough to pull a car door off, then I'd hate to imagine what she'd do to us if she got through that door. The police were slow to get there, even though the police station was less than half a mile down the road. I guess I shouldn't be surprised. I'd be hard-pressed to believe that Marge was capable of destroying a car if I hadn't seen it happen before my very eyes. Dude, what the fuck is going on? Sam spilled, his breaths falling out in short, rapid successions. I tried my best to explain the situation away, but there didn't seem to be a reasonable explanation for anything we'd seen. I'm not sure how long it was, maybe 15 or 20 minutes, before the police finally arrived. I saw the cruiser lackadaisically cruise up to the building through the window. It's all good, man, the cops are here, I reassured, patting Sam's back as he nervously munched on a bag of potato chips. As I saw Officer Weaver, as I said before, we live in a small town and everyone was pretty familiar with one another, get out of his patrol car. I could see his demeanor immediately shift. Marge hadn't seen him yet, her soft scratch perpetually emanating from beyond the door. Miss Goldman, are you alright? I could hear him say, the scratching stopping immediately. Officer Weaver took a step back, dropping to his knee as he unholstered his gun. Suddenly, Marge came into view, moving quickly on all fours once more. I'm not sure how many shots rang out, but I wouldn't be surprised if he'd emptied the whole clip into her. The last thing I saw, before dropping to my ass and covering my head, was bits and pieces of Miss Goldman's head taking up residence on the ground. A little while passed before someone knocking at the door brought me out of my daze. Open up, it's Officer Weaver, you guys alright? He called out. We made our way to the door, still shaken up from what we had just seen. The heavy-set man was dripping with sweat, his bald head glistening in the morning sun. His training must not have covered old ladies with superhuman strength, his choppy breaths, and anxious demeanor was sorely apparent. I hadn't noticed an ambulance, along with our co-worker Sienna, had arrived while we were shell-shocked in the concession stand. I couldn't make out what she was saying to the paramedic as he wheeled a gurney holding a body bag into the back of the ambulance, but I could tell she was in absolute hysterics. Boys, I hadn't noticed the officer trying to get our attention as we watched the chaos unfold all around us. I'm sorry you had to see that, are you okay? He continued. Sam and I exchanged glances, silently agreeing that we were not, in fact, okay. I didn't want to keep him, or Marge's corpse, here any longer than necessary, reassuring Officer Weaver that we were all right, just a little shaken up. Good. He paused, choosing his next words carefully, just a little flu going around. People are sick, you know? He looked at us both awkwardly, seeing if we bought any of the bullshit that just spilled out of his mouth. We remained silent. Anyways, try to keep this quiet until we find out some more info, he said, patting our shoulders before returning to his squad car. Just as quickly as they'd arrived, the ambulance and Officer Weaver cruised out of the park until the weeping willows swallowed them up in the distance. Sienna ran over to us, her face wrought with worry. What the fuck just happened? She cried, her hands outstretched. Sam and I looked at one another, then back to the road to make certain that the officer was gone. We sat in the concession stand, recounting the story to Sienna, who seemed to grow more incredulous with each passing detail. "There's no way any of that happened," she said, her once worried eyes now seemed doubtful. "Tell that to the piece of Swiss cheese in the back of the ambulance," Sam shot back. "I mean, you saw them throw her in the back of that thing. Be a pretty expensive prank, don't you think?" Sienna shot Sam a dirty look, returning her eyes to me. "Please tell me this is all bogus," she said, furrowing her brow. We didn't have any time to convince Sienna otherwise, not that we would have to, as Officer Weaver's squad car came rolling back into the park. "I'm beginning to think it's much, much worse." Sienna, Sam and I stood silently watching as Officer Weaver's squad car careened down the park's gravel road, reappearing through the dense plumes of the weeping willows. Though we'd done nothing wrong, I couldn't help but feel that we were in some sort of trouble. The gravel crunched underneath the car's tires as he came to an abrupt halt, heaving his gelatinous self out of the driver's seat. "Sorry to bother you all again. But," he paused, looking over his shoulder as though someone were following him, "I need you kids to go home, the town's being placed on lockdown." The three of us exchanged puzzled glances. Sienna's anxiety had become nearly palpable. Officer Weaver stood awkwardly for a moment, his normally sunburned face had taken on a pallid complexion, as though he were either going to vomit or go belly up at any moment. Something was clearly off. He sighed. "I suggest y'all ride together, it's not SS." He stumbled over his words, his dewy skin was basically drenched with sweat at this point. "Look, it's just better if you lot ride together, keep this flu thing from spreading so much." This was all bullshit and everyone knew it, though none of us could work up the courage to call him out. Despite his protests for us to leave immediately, we convinced Officer Weaver that we'd head home after we got the park shut down. "Just hurry up with it and give me a call if you see anything else weird going on, understood?" he instructed, giving us a weak smile. We simply nodded. He plopped down once more in the driver's seat before disappearing beyond the trees once more. "Well, there you have it, Sienna," Sam said as he threw up his arms. "We aren't bullshitting you." Sienna's crossed her arms and turned towards me, her eyes as big as saucers, the dam threatening to break at any moment. "It'll be fine," I began, searching for the right words to say. "We should probably take your car since," I motioned towards the heap that Marge had left Sam's car in. "You guys can stay at my apartment for a while, just don't mind my roommate," Sam said, finally offering up something other than his usual smart-ass remarks. We spent the next half hour closing up the various buildings through the park, since even in the event of the apocalypse our boss would still find a reason to fire us. We met back at Sienna's car, a beat-up, little, two-door Honda she'd bought with her meager wages since she started working at the park about a year back. We awkwardly piled into the dinky thing and set off down the park's gravel road. "This thing got any suspension left?" Sam quipped as the loose rocks nipped at the sides of her car. "At least it actually runs more than half the time," I replied. Sienna smiled at me and rolled her eyes, the tension seemingly melting away. "Hey, maybe it could be fun. I mean, we hardly ever hang outside of work," Sienna added. "I think the only time the three of us ever hung outside of work was when we'd gone to one of the local bars and ended up having to scrape Sam's drunken self off the floor after he'd had one too many." We continued down the park's winding, gravel road for a while, listening to the music that was playing softly from the car's speakers. It's odd, looking back, this moment of peace before shit utterly hit the fan. We hit the four-way leaving the park, Sam giving half-assed directions as we turned left and right through various neighborhoods. "Have you guys noticed anything weird?" Sienna blurted out, her knuckles visibly tightening on the wheel. "No, why?" I replied, feeling a bit uneasy at Sienna's sudden discomfort. "Nope," Sam added, scrolling through his phone, completely disinterested. "There's literally nobody outside," she said. "I mean, it's beautiful out and the streets are just empty." "Well, no shit, Sherlock, we're supposed to be on lockdown," Sam replied, peering up from his phone with an irritated look on his face. We all remained silent for a moment, taking in the barren streets of Elmfield. "Just kinda creepy, I guess," Sienna croaked out, finally breaking the awkward silence in the car. We rounded a few more corners before finally reaching Sam's street. As we closed in on the dingy apartment buildings ahead, I noticed something odd hung up in one of the trees in front of the post office neighboring the complex. As we drew closer, the shape became clearer. It wasn't a something, but a someone. "What the fuck is that?" I blurted, pointing towards the thing in the trees. The car came to a slow, creaking halt next to the entrance of the post office. I pressed my face against the car's window, trying my best to get a good angle of whatever the hell I was looking at. Up in the tree, staring down at us with unblinking eyes, was Daniel Chavez, one of the attendants at our local gas station. His arms and legs were twisted at unnatural angles, his elbows and knees seemingly inverted. His eyes bore the same milky color that Margie's had when she attacked us. Suddenly, Daniel's oddly stiff body began to twist and unfurl as he barreled down the tree at an alarming speed. Everyone in the car broke out in hysterics as Sienna punched the gas, the tires of her old car screeching as we went. We rounded the corner of the complex's parking lot and into the front yard, getting as close to the front door as possible. Like something out of a Scooby-Doo cartoon, we all hopped out and began sprinting for the door. Apartment G9, Apartment G9, Apartment G9, that's all that mattered. We ran up the stairs and past the various units before finally happening on the right door. Sam fumbled with his keys before finally giving up and banging on the door, calling out to his roommate who he referred to as Critter. A minute or so passed before he finally answered, unlocking the door as we all fell at his feet in a quaking pile. It took a while for us all to calm down enough to explain everything to Critter, who seemed more concerned with the fact that Sam brought visitors rather than the demonic thing lingering nearby. Critter was a little younger than us, though his tired, baggy eyes and 5 o'clock shadow would make you think otherwise. Whatever, they can stay, but be quiet cuz I'm trying to sleep. He turned and walked off to his room, running his long, shaggy brown hair through his fingers as he went. We sat in the living room for a while, discussing each other's theories as to what was happening. The television buzzed quietly in the corner of the room as we spoke. Our local news channel seemed to be down. I paid no mind to Sienna as she walked off to answer a call, making mindless small talk with Sam as she went. I'm not sure how long passed before Sienna finally returned, immediately noticing the sickening pallor her skin had taken on. "Dude, are you good? Do you need any water?" Sam asked, noticing Sienna's bizarre disposition. Slowly, she turned her head to meet our gaze and opened her mouth to speak, though nothing came out. Instead, she retched, gagging as she placed her hand over her mouth. I jumped up from the couch and knelt beside her, placing my hand on her shoulder. After asking if she was okay a half dozen times, after offering her water and a bed to lie in, she was finally able to speak. "This isn't good, this isn't good, this isn't good," she kept repeating to herself. I held Sienna as she pulled at her hair, trying to stop herself from hyperventilating. Suddenly, she met my eyes, her gaze as serious as a heart attack. My mom tried to come visit but the town's entirely barricaded." She paused, looking down at the floor. "They told her we're infected with a deadly virus."